Alright, today we're going to replace the fuel filter in this 2003 Trailblazer. So the first thing we're going to do is relieve the fuel pressure. So with the engine running, let's pull out the fuel pump relay. So you've seen this before, 41 fuel pump relay, 41, 41. Next we want to pull off the gas cap.
So why do you want to pull off the fuel cap?
Because in some conditions the fuel tank will build up pressure as part of the evap test, and then when you take the line to the filter off, it just keeps dumping and keeps dumping. So it's just best, good habit to get into is just pull them off of all of them. So this is it. This is the fuel filter right here. You can see it mounted up in here. The way I usually do them is I pop the lines loose first, get them out of the way, and then unclip the little clippy hold down for the filter. So let's get to it. And I don't know how good you're going to be able to see up in there while I'm doing the job, but basically what I'm doing is I'm going to be squeezing in these tabs right here to release the line from each of these. They're not easy sometimes, so what we want to do here is get both sides of the clip pushed in at exactly the same time, and it sucks. Sometimes you have to push it back up toward the filter to get the tabs up far enough to be able to get pushed in. So you saw that once I pushed it in toward the filter, it was a little bit easier to release. Where I got my drain pan ready, fire in the hole. I'll get out of the way, you turd. The bottom one could be tricky because it's tight up in there, but it's doable the same way. Just push the line up in toward the filter and try to, I know my arm's probably blocking the view, but
yeah.
I'm not forcing anything hard. I'm just using hand pressure, nothing crazy. We don't want anything to break as far as these lines go because, well, just look at them. They look expensive. Let this thing drain out here. Oh yeah. So here's the factory clip on my 03. You just want to squeeze the two sides together and just kind of work them out. I guess like the fuel filter, you have to do them both at the same time for it to actually come out. And it sucks doing it one-handed, but it's not the end of the world. I guess this is why so many people have them break, because man, this thing's just like an asshole, you know. So some brute force and I got it off. But yeah, like I said, it's no wonder, you know, so many of these break. I mean, it's like impossible. Plus I guess over time this thing will get brittle. If you do break it, don't sweat it. You can just wrap a zip tie through this slot all the way around the filter assembly. Be doing the same thing. Now that all that crap's out of the way, get this guy up out of here. So the Delco looks a little bit different than that one, but we've got our clips. Everything looks cool. So go ahead and slide him up in here. Got him back into place. Can snap this guy back in. I don't know how good you guys can see this. Now as we're doing is we're clicking these lines back in. So as you can see in the lines, they have two big box windows, and that's where the tabs are going to pop through. So you can orient your clip, you know, into position with the line and then just snap her home. Just make sure that both sides fully engage. That's pretty important. Probably the most important part of the job. I don't know how good you guys can see that lower line, but it's the same deal. I've got my tab oriented up. Got both sides to click in. Again, both tabs on each line should be, you know, flush down into the thing. Don't go crazy, but you can give them a little just quick pull test. You know, like I said, don't break nothing, but just make sure that they're fully seated. I mean, that's pretty damn important. Now on mine, I'm pretty sure I got everything tightened up, so we're going to go ahead, and plug the fuel pump relay back in, spin the gas cap on, and turn the key on. Fire in the hole. Alright, everything looks tight and dry by the filter, and I say we're good to go. Most of the stuff you spill here you can wipe off with just a rag, or it'll just evaporate off by the time you're done with the filter. So let's start her up. What did I do just there?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, when you turn the key on, it runs the pump for a couple seconds and builds up line pressure, and you're instantly going to put like 50 some pounds, you know, on the system. So if one of these lines was off, you know, it'll blow right off. You know what I mean? Or if something was wrong, you'd catch the leak before you actually start the vehicle. And I had my pan there ready just in case something was wrong. It would hopefully catch a lot of the, you know, fuel. So that's all we did. Just a quick verification that everything's cool. I have to jack it up to do it. I have to put a little jack stand underneath this because I cannot do it without jacking it up a little bit. There's just not enough room. It's bad enough, you know, you're underneath doing it with one arm or whatever. It just sucks. I've tried to do it a variety of ways, coming in, laying down upside down from the front or from that side, and believe it or not, the hardest way works the best. You know, we were probably out here for probably 4 minutes total doing that, and that included me talking and getting crap set up. It's actually heavy. It's been in there since I think last February I did it. Because this is one of those things that I recommend doing outside what the manual says. I think it's the only thing, actually. In one time, I actually cut one of these open and was able to tap out a whole lot of like sediment that was like trapped in the little filter inside this. I mean, into a white cup. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. Maybe I'll do it with this one too. And this was the AC Delco GF831. I took off a Fram. I've used Purelator, I've used them all. Whichever one's cheapest is the one I use. There's no benefit of one over the other. Hell, they're probably all made by the same people. Here are my owner's manual for my 03. 30,000 miles, replace fuel filter. 60,000 miles, replace fuel filter. 90,000 miles, replace fuel filter. So GM recommends it every 30,000 miles, but I don't agree with that interval. So here's the deal. I've had this truck for over 5 years. I know when something's not quite right, and a lot of that has to do with my daily drive. I've been doing the same commute to work every day for, you know, forever. We're not gonna get too fancy with, you know, miles per gallon or stuff, but I want to put it in a different perspective that maybe you guys at home might understand. So this is what started the whole fuel filter debate. You figure every day to work, that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I drive 100 miles. On Monday morning, I'd have a full tank. By Thursday night, meaning I had already, you know, got to work, so I'm at 100, 200, 300, I'm at 350 miles, I'd get the low fuel light, and that would be right about 18.7 gallons it would take to top the gas tank up. And you know, I drive the same commute, no extra miles, I get gas from the same place. The only real variables there are temperature, or maybe some kind of change in the fuel, even though it's bought from the same place, or even like dumb stuff like how long I sit at a light, you know, idling. But consistently, week after week, right after that 4th trip to work, you know, getting there, right around 350 miles, low fuel light comes on. So if you take those 350 miles and divide it by those 18.7 gallons, it's about it's kind of a coincidence, but 18.7 miles per gallon. So now let's fast forward like probably 10, 11 months later. So same deal. Full tank on Monday, go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But now, on Wednesday night when I get home, the low fuel light comes on. So on the way home, the low fuel light comes on, and once again, it takes 18.7 gallons. But wait a minute. And this is what, you know, started this whole thing. So it's like, wait a minute, what the fuck? I get gas consistently every Thursday before I come home from work. Now I'm coming home from work the night before and the low fuel light turns on. So basically, it's like another trip to work I kind of lost there. You see what I'm saying? So let's do the math. Now in this case, I've only made it to work and back once, twice, 3 times low fuel. So I've only got roughly 300 miles out of that tank. We're gonna do the math here, 18.7 gallons, and that brings us down to 16 miles per gallon. Well, that's a red flag right there. It's like, well, wait a minute. I kind of lost, you know, 2 miles per gallon, 2.7 if you want to get really technical. And, you know, and that was like 2008 or so when gas started to really get up over 3 and everybody was panicking. Although 3 would be like a luxury now. But I knew there was a problem. And one of the things that I never done in the truck was actually replace that stupid gas filter. Well, when I took it off, I mean, that thing was like a brick. I mean, it had a lot more weight than that one did. I didn't do anything else. I didn't reset fuel trims, did nothing with the PCM, put on a new filter, and instantly everything was restored. So I figure, okay, that's cool. We're good for another 30,000 miles. Nope. Almost a year later, I got the same slow decline in mileage. The first time was in 08, and then it happened in 09, and then 10, and then 11. And of course now that people actually want to see stuff like this, it doesn't happen. I'm like 3 months over the time frame of when it would actually start hurting my miles per gallon. I was really hoping to see, you know, maybe my fuel trims off a little bit. That was my theory as to why the mileage tanks. My theory was the PCM is going to like slightly increase injector on time, you know, to compensate for the, you know, lack of fuel volume. Because like I said, I mean, that thing was so clogged, I'm surprised the truck even ran. Anyway, moving on. So, on another Trailblazer forum that I used to be on, I started talking about this. You know, people that had, you know, bought the truck, they're not happy with the miles per gallon, you know. I would say stuff like, you know, the fuel filter is one of the most overlooked maintenance items that I've seen firsthand can severely affect miles per gallon. And other people saw that, and they really got pissed off. I mean, they made me out to be some kind of like fuel filter psycho. Put the fucking fuel filter in the basket. And that's not really the case. You know, they'd say, you know, fuel filter can't do that, and blah, blah, blah. Well, they're not technicians. You know, they're just people that portray technicians on an internet forum. I mean, until you've had drivability problems caused by a clogged fuel filter on a GM, you're making stuff up on the internet, you know. I've dealt with shit. I've had no starts on GMs caused by a clogged fuel filter. Had, you know, PO171, some of the pickups, clogged fuel filter. Drivability problems, clogged fuel filter. I had a Pontiac Montana with intermittent stalling, rode around with a fuel pressure gauge on it, and the fuel pressure just tanked, and the fuel filter was the fix for that. So see, when people that are not technicians come on an internet forum and try to Google all their answers, and then they want to use that as their argument, it's like, I don't give a fuck what you guys are saying, because you're not in the shop every day. You don't fix cars every day. You don't see problems and identify problems like this every day. So even if there's replies to this video saying that this will not give you miles per gallon, I'm not saying it will give you miles per gallon, but it will restore miles per gallon if miles per gallon was lost as a result of a restricted fuel filter. See, that's the difference. I got one thing to say to them: sit on it. You know what I mean? Because one thing about math doesn't lie. You know, that's why math's a pretty cool guy. It doesn't lie. You know, if I can sit here and do my mileage and, you know, gallons used repeatedly, you know. I mean, I don't know if you remember, I had that big freaking stack of receipts and that little notepad I had for, you know, 2 years or whatever, just to kind of document, you know, the mileage I was getting, to prove to me more than anything else, because I don't have to prove shit to anybody else, you know. I know it works. I know I put it on my vehicles once a year. I know that I put it on my customers' vehicles once a year. And, you know, I explain the same thing I explained today, you know. This is what happened to me, and this is why I recommend doing it. But here's the funny thing about the fuel filters. If you remember in my change oil video, I'm getting revved up here. So if you remember my video about changing the oil, I talked about the asshole who checks your air filter every time you go in. Well, I'm going to talk about a case of an Envoy. This is a 2002 Envoy that had been coming to a shop every 3,000 miles. And every 3,000 miles, that asshole would take those 3 screws out and look at the air filter. The Envoy came to me for unrelated issue, and she asked me to do a check over of the car, and that fuel filter was original. Now that's what I don't get, you know. These people, like these oil change shops and all that stuff, they check the air filter every 3,000 miles or every time you bring your car in, but they don't give a second look to the gas filter. So why is Dickface here checking the air filter and suggesting air filter, you know, every 3,000 miles when the fuel filter never gets a mention? And a lot of that, in my opinion, has to do with the competence needed to replace fuel filters on any vehicle and the profit margin for air filters. Because I've seen quotes where the shop had put an air filter on a customer's car for like $40. As we've talked about before, you know, it's taking out 3 screws and putting in an $18 paper filter. So there's a lot of markup, you know, for the air filters. Now that same guy that can just unscrew screws and unscrew clips probably can't do some of the fuel filters that are out there. I mean, some of them aren't easy like this. I know on like that 5.7 pickup I got over there, you need flare wrenches, and you know, it's so much variety of, you know, with the different cars that are out there that, you know, it's not economical for a shop to suggest fuel filters. But that kind of ties into the whole service writer thing, because why didn't the service writer at any point ever say, you know, you've been coming here every 3,000 miles, all we've done is, you know, oil change services and tire rotations, you know, why don't we look a little bit further to see if there's anything else that we might have missed? Because they missed the transfer case service at 50,000. They obviously missed 3 fuel filter services. I just think that, you know, if a shop or a person specifically is going to go and try to nickel and dime you for an air filter, you know, every time you bring your car in, that they should look at the whole car like that, you know, and at least let people know. Because there's so many people that, you know, don't get the regular maintenance done because they trust these places, and what's there to trust? And they're air filter salesmen. You know, like I said in that one video, I couldn't help but take these 3 screws out. Notice you need an air filter. I know this is going on way too long and I'm just blabbling about fuel filter stuff, but there's a lot that needed to be cleared up, at least on my end, because like I said, I don't really argue about it anymore. I don't care. If you like what you see, subscribe to my shit. If you feel that fuel filters are not a maintenance item and do not fix drivability problems, you are an idiot. Well, I'm sorry, it's just, here on YouTube I get to say what I want, you know. I try to maintain a little bit of etiquette on the forums, but here it's like Hulk Hogan, man, it's no holds barred. I don't give a fuck. Gasoline's good for like cleaning out cuts and stuff too. Oh yeah. See, when it really burns you really good, it you know it's cleaning the stuff out, so that's good. You just go like this, and the cut's completely gone.